on to the Monday, December 19th of 2022 combination public hearing and work session meeting for the planning board of the Village of Southampton, New York. Can I get a motion to open the meeting, please?
I move that the meeting be opened.
I second.
Thank you. Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you. So moving right along, public hearing, there's nothing on for that tonight. So we'll go right straight to our work session agenda, and the first thing on the agenda is 550, 554 Hill Street LP. And I can see that John is here and ready to go.
Good evening. Subject any comments that Kathy may have or any of the board members. We were here last, John Bennett for the applicant, and Vinnie Gaudiella from the Raina Group is available via Zoom if you have any questions, but I don't think you should, but in any event, he's here. We were last here on October 14, 2022. At that point, all issue on Kathy Eisman's list of open items were either complied with or it was agreed that they were not necessary, with the exception of these items, which we've taken care of. By correspondence dated October 17th, we submitted a revised landscape plan addressing all the comments raised by Nelson, Pope, and Voorhees. It was on October 17th. And then by correspondence dated November 23, 2022, we submitted a conceptual wastewater plan. Again, that was something that we submitted for the board's comfort. That wouldn't be part of the filed map. It's not appropriate because you can't file a map with wastewater plans shown on individual lots. The county clerk and the health department wouldn't sign it. They would reject it, but we submitted it just for the board's request to show that wastewater systems for the maximum sized house on all of these lots are easily attainable. So at this point, we would ask that, and then there was one thing. I think there's a SWIP was submitted. Vince received further comments on the SWIP. But again, the only thing in the conditional approval was that it be submitted. Ms. Eisman and your counsel will tell you that SWIPs are not typically, or jurisdictionally under the jurisdiction of the building department, but the board wanted the SWIP submitted, which has been done. So at this point, we would ask that referrals be made and a public hearing scheduled.
Want me to speak? Okay.
Sure.
Okay, John Ellsworth is also here from NPV via Zoom. We have been reviewing this over the past month and a half. I guess we received the conceptual sanitary plan and landscape plan, as you say, and also the updated letters we reviewed again from PSEG and Suffolk County Water Authority. We put together a draft memorandum for this evening. Willa, and I don't know if Jane has gotten on. I did email it to you just now. I didn't know that. I wasn't thinking about the Zoom part of this. But essentially what I will go through is that all the items that have been identified in our prior reviews as far as the completeness submission, including the request for the building envelope showing a conforming IA system or where it could work. Not necessarily where it would go, but that it could work on the sites, have been checked off. There are a few items here that are identified as items that would be, we would feel more comfortable if they would be conditions of approval, say, where we want to make sure that these things get followed through on, that might not be so clear on the plans. One of them has to do with let's see, it is, of course, water has to be issued to these lots, and that will be reaffirmed at the time of building permit application. Am I saying that right, John? Big?
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you say water has to be issued?
Just confirmation that water is availability. Water availability letter would be basically that water can be provided from Suffolk County Water Authority. And the planting plan does identify the proposed plant species as being drought tolerant. And Suffolk County Water Authority had also asked that smart irrigation controls be used That's not specifically stated, but from a completeness standpoint on a subdivision, that would be just something that, as a, for a condition. And also, as Mr. Bennett mentioned, a stormwater pollution prevention plan was submitted, was reviewed. A memo was provided to the building inspector and Vince and Rayner Group also for an update under the new general permit. And that's a DEC general permit for stormwater management. So that is, those are the 3 items. We do believe at this time it makes sense to schedule the public hearing and do the referrals. And under the final subdivision code, it is a referral to the village engineer to identify the need for any kind of performance bond, as well as Suffolk County Planning Commission. So the other part of our memo deals with SECR. SECR at the time of sketch plan was done, it was an extensive SECR review, and the findings of SECR were based upon a full EAF, numerous iterations, and a Part 3 EAF that was prepared by Nelson Pope and Voorhees for the village at that time. And the basis for the SECR determination has not changed. The proposed plan is the same as was in the prior submission for sketch plan approval. So there is no, there's no reason to reopen SECR.
I had a few questions on the materials that were submitted. Maybe John can help answer some of those questions. 2 particular areas. One is that the proposed subdivision lots were being marketed as having 2 access and exit points, one to Hill Street and one to the beach. And I thought the board had agreed, and also the Zoning Board of Appeals had said that the interior lot that's going to have the proposed shared driveway with Captain's Neck should just exit on Captain's Neck and enter through a shared driveway where there was a covenant creating a shared driveway. John Bennett's office submitted an example of that kind of covenant, and when you compare it to what's been submitted to the board, it's missing the 4 elements that are legally required to create a shared driveway covenant. One of them being that it has to be an absolute condition of the subdivision, stated that it's a condition of the board granting this subdivision that there will be this covenant for a shared driveway. Number 2, that it applies to future purchasers of the property, not just to the heirs and assigns. It must also apply to future buyers because, it's already on the market, but presumably these subdivided plots won't always be necessarily owned by the same people. And other specifics of a shared driveway, that there was a finding that this benefited all of the parties involved. So the applicant in this case and all future buyers, that this would benefit having this covenant for a shared driveway. There needs to be that finding. But basically, the example covenant that was provided had all of those elements that are missing from the agreement that we have in front of us. And the concern is when I have brought up things like a hedge or how big is that access point for the utilities, I always get an answer that, they're not going to put a hedge there, or, leading me to believe that they want to continue to have that access and exit onto Hill Street. And have never understood what it is that we're approving, because if we're approving a shared driveway out to Captain's Neck, which is what the ZBA said they wanted to do, and that was why they granted the subdivision, then it should have those elements in it. So the example that was provided, if it followed exactly that language, I would have no problem with it, but it doesn't contain any of that legal required language.
I responded to, this is probably the 3rd time Ms. Bernstein has brought up these issues. I've responded to them with case law and statutory law in writing. I'll just rest on that. These notes on a map, given more than adequate case law and treatise law, notes on a map run with the land. The covenants provide that these things will bind not only the current owner, but any subsequent owner. Ms. Bernstein at the last meeting said, well, how do you know that these things are going to be binding? You'll have somebody put them on the property. When they own it, how do you know they're binding on the subsequent owners? Every single subdivision that has been approved by this board or the planning, any local planning board has common driveway agreements, covenants and restrictions.
But if I understand what Will is
Yeah.
saying, it's that
Yeah.
that language isn't in the submission that you gave us,
Yes,
but it's in the example that you gave us. One
What
of your
she's
own.
misunderstanding is the fact that once you put these things on a subdivision map, they are binding and run with the land. She just doesn't seem to want to accept that, which is why I provided authority and case law that is determinative. So I've already responded, and that's my response.
If I may,
My
Chairman,
response to
if
that
I may,
is-
if I may I just want to respond. Counsel, I appreciate you showing me your hand to get me to stop speaking. My point
Yeah,
is
you were
that I
interrupting me,
assume.
Counselor.
I'm sorry?
You were interrupting me.
No, I wasn't. I assume that what Mr. Bennett's point actually is that I assume there will be no objection on the part of the applicant, given what's been just said, that will work out language that is agreeable to both the board and the applicant, which will do exactly what the member of the board just said, which is to make sure that all of these covenants and restrictions will be binding not just upon the current takers of the property, but upon anybody who takes it afterward. So I didn't mean to interrupt.
Absolutely.
My
No,
point was
no.
that I think that we can
Full
work
agreement.
through this
Full agreement.
to make sure that all language will be satisfactory to council, to the board, as well as to the applicant, and to make sure that the members of the board are comfortable that the shared driveway, the easements, the use of them will be binding on any takers at any time and will run with the land. And I'm sure Mr. Bennett would agree with me that this will then be recorded, but beyond that, it will be, whatever decision this board issues, it will be a part of that as a condition, part of a covenant and restriction as a condition, and whatever was submitted to the board before, legal word isn't really tweaked, but can be tweaked to make sure that the board is absolutely comfortable with that arrangement. And am I incorrect on that?
You took the words out of my mouth. I
And
want to
that-
make sure the council and the
That
board
could be
member.
covered with conditions, with a condition.
Both. It will be covered, actually
And your
in three
review,
ways. It'll
yeah.
be covered in 3 ways. It'll be on the map, it will be covered by written deeds and restrictions, and a covenant, and then actually, these are all recorded. So
Yeah.
anybody who goes to take this property or in any way purchase, in any way or to use it other than the person who is the current owner would be bound by those restrictions. So as we move forward, the language will, if it's not clear enough as it is now, we'll make sure it's clear.
Okay.
And I'm not hearing that there will be any objection to
No,
that. I think
no,
what the
of course not,
applicant's
no.
counsel is saying is they're going to agree to that, and it will be in language acceptable to the board and board's counsel.
That's the purpose, and any concerns that the board has or council has upon his review, we'll take care of them. This is part of the process.
Okay.
We
Well,
submitted covenants that had been acceptable based upon covenants that had previously been accepted, not only by this board on subdivisions that I work on, but the town. But if there's anything that you want to repeat or whatever comfort it needs, we all know where we're going on this. I have no problem with any of that.
Yeah, I have no problem if the language exactly mirrors what you submitted as an enforceable covenant for a driveway that's a shared driveway, including that it be filed with Suffolk County. But the one that you submitted doesn't include any of those 4 things that makes it legally enforceable, including writing on the map that it's a shared driveway and indicating on that map, filing it and saying it's a condition and it applies not just to heirs and assigns, but also to future purchasers.
Well, we'll just respectfully disagree with that, but if you want language that makes it clearer to your liking, that's fine. I don't care, because that's what the idea is.
And
Well,
what
I'm just looking at what you submitted.
I
to
did,
the
and it was
board.
legally sufficient. But if you
But-
want additional language, that's fine. We're not having an argument. That's fine.
No, I just would like you to look at the language, and if it's the exact language, I thought it was exactly what I was raising before.
Yeah.
The covenant you submitted was great. The one that you submitted in this case doesn't have any of that language.
Okay,
So-
if you'd like to make any changes to the covenant that gives you comfort, that I'm fine with that, as long as they're legal. That's fine.
what we'll do, if I may, I have the driveway easement and declaration that was submitted, I think, by councilors to this application. I'll compare it with the other one being mentioned. I will circulate both to Mr. Bennett and then to the board, language that hopefully will address all the board's issues. But if not, we'll go back and make sure that they do.
My guess is it'll be fine. Yeah.
But we'll make sure that they meet with what the board member is saying, so that the language has that within it in the covenant.
Okay.
John, Bennett, Mr. Bennett, what do you want? Are you John or Mr. Bennett? What do you want to be? Mr. John Bennett. You know,
John works
you
fine
know-
for me,
you
as
know
my
that
dad used to say, just don't call me
I
late
have
for
had-
dinner. That's all.
having been involved with this proposal
Long time.
that comes from your new client for many years, a man of great expertise, because he was involved in this process for years, the process of divisions and lots and everything else. I have had and recorded before, even in the environmental approval,
Mhm.
two concerns that relate to access.
Mhm.
And when I questioned you on this before, you gave me a letter. It didn't get to me with the exhibits. I've just grabbed this file to see
Okay.
what the exhibits are. You quoted the Berglund access, which was not one I was familiar with. You gave Fairleigh as an example, which I would ask you as a lawyer reading this. Probably we could say it's irrelevant because it's a wide strip and it's a series of houses. It's a lot like an access off Captain's Neck, which is called Fairleigh Road, where they divided this particular block of land, which has a lot of zoning of large description. This is a corner of it which historically has not conformed because of a non-conforming use,
Mhm.
which, if we want to get into that issue, was abandoned, in my view, for all the purposes that would apply, even to this man's applicant's own ZBA years before. My record of its being abandoned, it was a personal check that I gave him to buy things when he was abandoning storage. I forget the date of it, but it was about 09 or 10. I forget even what my wife bought. We bought a number of things. Moving and storage which every council cited everything before about vans and everything else, was stopped then, and the business moved up to Route 39. He or his brother still run it, I'm told. It was abandoned. It became, for most of the years, a dispatch point for the Wines plumbing business and a storage area for the son-in-law, Squires and Pearson, to store heavy equipment. For years, they used to store the cesspool trucks and heavy equipment there. That was the main use, not the storage and moving that was there for the prior 20 or 30 years, for a long time. It was a long, long time non-conforming use. I know about the storage and moving because I've had children use it, even in the recent time, the new form of it. And I know I think I may have even used it back in the teens or before, when I lived in the village, before I returned to the village. This is a long introduction to say, I don't think other than the Berglund thing, that the citations you gave for this property not involving flag lots is particularly controlling. If if a majority of the board disagree with me, then we will have.
Alan, let
then
me
we will
respond. You're
have
talking about
ea-
two things, though.
Then we will
Yeah.
have easements
Yeah,
which go in consideration of getting forward with what is still, I guess, the abandonment of a non-conforming use.
Well, let me respond to that, Alan. This is all irrelevant because you have a zoning board of appeals decision that has set the zoning for the property that was challenged, and the Supreme Court, Suffolk County, dismissed this challenge. Number one, please, if I may, Alan, you've
okay.
raised two issues.
That's fine. No, I'll listen
So
to you.
that's all, this is all,
I read
this
it.
has been stuff that you've been saying all along, but the zoning board of appeals made its decision, it's been upheld, and as the case law that I provided to you, and you're a lawyer, you went to the finest law school in the country, as the case law that I provided to you says that that establishes the zoning for the property, number one. Number two, it took me about 5 minutes, literally 5 minutes, to think up and give to you examples of houses in the estate area that are serviced not by fee access on a public road, but by easements. One of them is owned a subdivision where I believe a lawyer that has represented your family, Bob Giffra, lives. You get to Bob Giffra's house by driving down the driveway for Kenny Fox's property. I gave you them all up and down First Neck Lane. You made a statement that access via easement as opposed to fee ownership just never happens in the village. Alan, with immense respect, that's just not true. So I just gave you a grab, first 4 or 5 that came to my mind. And not only that, I gave you a circumstance where there was a flagpole was established, but the planning board said, we don't want you to use the flagpole. We want you to use an easement. That's the Berglund property. So what can I say to you, Alan? I mean, I know you don't like this application, but the Zoning Board of Appeals has established the zoning for this piece of property, period.
I've read the appeal and I've read the opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I have some concerns that the opinion for us, this board, and for the ZBA is highly duplicative of a couple of issues. Doesn't surprise me at all, came from the same advisory source, so that happens in the village. I know they have the power to change the zoning in connection with the subdivision that we're dealing with. The argument we've been given is that, quote, this is minor and therefore we have less authority apparently as opposed to major. Okay. My concern is with access to the lots. I was advised, I didn't say that was the case.
Yeah, okay.
But I called your attention to the fact I was advised by the village building department that to have other than a flag lot is a major exception
Well, that's
in
just
the
untrue.
village of Southampton. Okay,
Well,
they
that-
obviously disagree
I suffer
with you.
from having lived in the village for 66 years, I guess, and
You-
knowing
you
it better
beat
than
me.
the current building department.
beat me.
What can I say to you?
I've only been here for 55 years. You got me. Okay,
Okay.
on duration. I know about in full the access to the Betts property and its subdivision with the driveway that went in for and I know all about there 4
There's never a
residences that go in.
subdivision there, Alan. It was created by deeds well before there was a planning
know,
board in
but
the village.
I know about that one
Yeah.
for other reasons because my attention was called to it for other purposes, not by the Giffra family, okay? It was called by another family that lived on it, and not by the Fox family. I'm familiar with it for
The
other purposes.
Senator's son, yes.
So I knew that. And the examples you gave are excellent. But they are, and the one for the Irving, that's a multifamily development. That's under a different heading. My concern with this has always was, and I said it when this was approved by this board to go forward by people who are no longer involved on this board, the access to Captain's Neck, I thought had 3 major problems with it to approve it. Even even to give the secret, which is used for lots of purposes other than the main purpose of that law, it is probably one of the few accesses in the village with as much drop in it, and I've tried for months now to find the original survey, not the most recent survey from Rayner, which has different elevations on the drop. At that point, it was 13 or 14 feet of decline. That's an issue
I've
that
walked it.
I'm sure you can be
Not
resolved.
bad.
I've walked it
Yeah.
more often than you have, and I've walked it. It's about more to the property next to it. It's a major engineering issue to put that in, and if it's only governed by one of these rare easements as opposed to a flag lot, the future gave me great concern. I didn't think it was good to get there that way. The first application we had for 4 lots actually vetoed it from the fire department. They said that access wouldn't work for fire department. Fine. That's
Now they
history.
say it does, though.
That's why it moved to 3 properties, not 4.
Dean said it does.
I understand he changed it as a single into the rear property, but from the rear property to the depth, it comes up a little bit before it gets to the street. I had a conference on it with David Emelita, who was the environmental advisor to the applicant at that point, an old friend of yours, I think, an old friend of mine. I've known him for years.
Good guy.
He and I agreed that the reason for the issue there was it used to be, believe it or not, the end of Hetty Creek over there. That affects properties all the way back across Lee Avenue to Hetty Creek.
It's a lot of landfill.
We filled in a lot of landfill. I've lived on them. I know all about them. That was the reason for it, and we agreed, okay, that's history. You're not going to reverse things in the village now for 100 years of landfill changes and filling in. But that's the cause of this drop, and so I have a major reservation on that being controlled by a routine shared easement, not ownership for whoever owns the lot 3, the back lot. And I registered that to you. Thank you for your research. I got the letter. It referred to exhibits that I just now found in the file. It didn't get to me before so that I could read about the Irving and the others. The only one I had never seen before was the decision jointly by this board for the Berglund property,
Yeah, probably, yeah.
which everybody cites. Berglund's one of the great
I just wanted to let
opinions that governs action in this village, because a lot of exceptions from that Berglund property.
Fairly, just so you know, that's a series of easements. The road, what we all call
Yeah.
Fairly, that road sits on the lots proper, all of them.
Right, but we ran into that partly when it came up because of we were briefly involved in that. I forget what you were when they were building a house adjacent to it, where a lot of those people got involved in what was going on, and with an easement that you wanted to, through the front property off of Hill Street to get to the major property. That I did review. Let's just say anecdotally, it was not part of the issue, and that I think is 100 and some years old.
So John,
Older than you and me, so that's not what controls it.
I just want to clarify.
The absence of a flag lot here is still of concern to me. I don't think it's good village planning, and I think Wella is concerned about it for other reasons, which she's just recorded. She wants to make sure that if we're doing something other than a flag lot where the people own it, we have it. The flag lots are of issue to the village. They've taken our jurisdiction, the planning board's jurisdiction for flag lots has been removed. It's been transferred to the ARB in the middle of this. Somebody's wisdom. We were removed from governing both flag lots and tennis courts. So we've had some traction of
This is
jurisdiction.
not a public hearing.
I know.
That's the council
What is a
meeting.
work session?
No.
I'm just trying to tell
Someone
you.
raising their hand, this is
No,
not a
I'm-
public hearing.
That's not, I'm not of interest to that, okay?
Okay.
I'm just telling you, that's the nature of my concern is, this falls in the exception area. So, what do they say? Walking on water happens occasionally, but you gotta do it carefully, because
Yeah,
the
I know.
first step is the most important.
Alan, the ship has
Okay.
sailed. I don't know what else to say to you.
No, I'm just telling you the reason for it.
I understand.
Your letter
You've
doesn't
articulated
persuade
it.
me, though, that with this rear driveway. Now, the history of this rear drive was it was objected to in about 2012 in a public hearing. The applicant's late wife, lovely lady, who's perished, she said of record in a public hearing where there's a recording that I got, and I distributed it, I guess it was to people that are no longer on this board. I got the tape, one of the few tapes left. She said there was no question that they would ever use the edge of their property on the south side along the neighbors, but they would ever use it for access to the rear lot. Now, she's perished. It wasn't her husband who said it. She said they would never use it. That's what called my attention to it to begin with.
I also pointedly spoke to the project architect, who said that he didn't remember ever anything to that effect ever being said, nor would he have said it, nor was he authorized to say it.
The architect, I'm sure, didn't say it, but the proponent, the lady making the application in person in this room said they'd never use it, because all of the neighbors except one, every single neighbor to this property has, since about 2010 and following, objected to this going in one way or the other. Sometimes with counsel, sometimes coming here in person to do it.
It still makes sense from a planning point of view. You have one less access point on Hill Street. Makes a lot of sense. That's what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be taking, these
I understand.
driveways off of the major. That's a major secondary road.
Anything you take off Hill Street today makes sense, because Hill Street is totally different than when this started, and then when Hill Street was stopped being the equivalent of Route 39. Hill Street has a long history, John. You know that.
No, I know, but even more, the congestion on it more even more suggests that you shouldn't have additional curb cuts on it.
I understand. So
That's
maybe
what we're trying to do. It's all good planning.
It makes it very. I know many of the people that live on Hill Street on the south side, not the north side, and I'll confess personally, I think the ZBA made a less than full balancing of all the 5 statutes and everything else in the reason. I think in rezoning this, they made a mistake for the land that is in between Halsey Neck, Captain's Neck, Ox Pasture, and Hill Street. This is a corner where it's invading what is really 120 acre and lot, 80 to 120 square foot lots, which is, there's still 4 or 5 to go, and most of them south are major lots, all the way down, which is why they built Mary Lee Drive to deal with them. It's the history, and you've made those arguments to us in reversing zoning down on the bottom of Little Plains. You came in, did it? You wanted to get a place that was supposed to be, I guess, 4 acres back to two acres parcels. Hey, you said the zoning was a mistake. Let's reverse it.
And the zoning board of appeals did it.
Yeah, you bet. I voted in favor of it. I said, okay, but this is going the other way. This is saying you want to make it smaller, not bigger.
No. What happened in that case? It was there were 2 2-acre lots. It's on the corner of Hill and Gin Lane.
Yeah, and they got combined, and they wanted to divide
They
it.
inadvertently were merged, but I was able to demonstrate that the surrounding lots were of a similar size.
Well,
and
it
the
was
zoning board of appeals at that point, really, if you
Well, it
look
was
at the case law, it
effective
doesn't
because
have a heck of a lot
the
of.
neighbors said they didn't mind.
No, there was a strenuous objection by the neighbor on the south side.
Across the street.
Across the street, yeah.
Yeah, I remember it well, and he withdrew it.
And Linda was representing it. Yeah.
He withdrew it, and so that was fine. Here, we've got everybody up there objecting to it except for one person who has never appeared and who's just put his house on the market, but a little tiny parcel.
So,
Ever.
in summary, just so I want to make sure
I'm
you are
not in
staunchly
favor.
against
I am
easements rather than flag
I'm against
lots.
easements, but if the
In this
majority of the
instance.
board wants to agree with the easement, I still have a huge objection to an easement on
I
the
think
south
the
lot.
applicant has heard that.
On the south lot. I don't like an easement on the south lot because it's wrong from engineering, it's wrong from water flow, and I'd love to see the survey, which has disappeared, that we dealt with when we did the secret.
Well, we really, in terms of water, stormwater in there, I at Kathy's direction, and Rayner Group, really, for lack of better expression,
read
beefed up the.
I read the Rayner thing in detail, but the survey before Rayner, which I think was Squires and Pearson, Holden, Squires, Holden and Pearson. It was Smith. It was your friend,
Pearson
your
comes
great
to-
buddy, Mr. Smith
As the honey
did it.
wagon.
Yeah, your great buddy,
All of
Mr.
that.
Smith did it for you. But that showed a drop, which I remember was 11, at least 11 feet, not counting another 2 feet or so to the property that's to immediately to the south of it.
Just
Okay.
eyeballing it and I'm
It's a
walking.
difference of, major difference of, sir. This shows, I believe, the worst is 7 feet.
Yeah, I look at those, but I still don't think it matters because the engineering has been looked at and
I
found to be
understand
sufficient.
engineers are fine, but the village doesn't have an engineer, and they subcontract it through the advisor to everybody in the village, which is Nelson Pope and Voorhees.
Well, that's a good thing.
Kathy's great, but she's got some partners who sometimes don't necessarily agree with
I'm an
her.
engineer too.
May I just check one thing? I just want to confirm, in terms of the discussion, just so that we're all clear that we're talking about the same thing. I believe the letter you're talking about, the correspondence, was November 21st with the exhibits. I just want to make sure we're talking about the same document.
Yeah, we gave some examples
That's
of
what I had. It's
access by
November
easement.
21st, and then,
That's what it is.
so in
yeah.
case people want to review that, I'll re-forward it to everyone. I
But-
just want to make sure we're talking about the same
Yep.
documents.
You're right, Mr. Blinkoff, but as I stated in the
Yep.
very beginning of my letter, I provided that quite candidly. I think it's irrelevant, but I provided it quite candidly out of my respect for Mr. McFarland.
Oh, no, I understand. I just want to make sure we're all
And I mean that
literally on
sincerely.
the same
I'm not
page.
just throwing
We've
that out
we've
there.
exchanged cases before. Yes, we've done this. You've done it, I've done it. I don't always agree with the way you read them, but we've done it before.
I had a quick question on the IA systems, because the sketch shows 3 pools for a 10-bedroom house and then has a note that it might be expanded 50%.
Well, they always
Okay.
do that. The health department, and Kathy will back this up, the health department always requires you to show a 50% expansion in case one of or more of the pools, leaching pools, stop functioning. They just want to make sure that you have room. Sometimes if one of the leaching pools stops functioning, you just don't want to dig it up and put it in the same area because there may be percolation problems. You may be running into clay or something like that. So every single septic system, and Kathy, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, every single septic system, whether it be a one pool or one of those, out on Meadow Lane, one of those 6 or 7 shallow pool systems, that you always have to show 50% expansion. That's to be able to put in a new pool if one of the leaching pools stops functioning.
Do you think there's, like, especially on lot 1, do you think there's, I think there should be concern that the septic is gonna dictate the size of that house.
Sometimes it does, yeah, sometimes it does. But there's certainly, what we did is we showed max size houses on each one of the lots, and the fact that there was more than adequate room for a conforming septic system.
Just in terms of, I've seen 2-bedroom houses requiring like 9 pools. So
Yep.
I just was wondering how we came up with
The only place you would have seen that would be on the ocean, where the depth to groundwater is maybe 2 feet. On the ocean, there's like a lens of fresh water, and after that, you're in salt. So they just want to make sure, because the whole idea, it changes, but the whole idea is that the bottom of the leaching pool, between the bottom of the leaching pool and groundwater, there's at least 3 feet. So the only place I've ever seen, I've done an awful lot of this stuff, 9 pools for a 2-bedroom house is somewhere where your depth to groundwater is about 2 feet, most commonly
Yep.
on the ocean. That could be near some other freshwater bodies, but yeah, you wouldn't need that. The depth to groundwater is quite sufficient. This is an upland parcel.
Right, but at what point in the process does that get sort of flushed out?
In the building department and the health department.
Okay.
yeah.
Exactly.
So when you make an application to
Yep.
the health department,
Yep.
you have to, in the old days, we could just give them a box. And they would say, here's the size of the house. Now you have to show them basic floor plans, which show the number of bedrooms, and then the engineer designs the system based upon the number of bedrooms. And when I say the number of bedrooms, it's not what you may call a bedroom, it's what has the potential for being a bedroom.
Understood.
So, and they're very, very tight on that.
But I just want to check, there was a question that was thrown toward Ms. Eisman's way, so let's just, Ms.
And
Eisman,
the
can you
question is,
confirm
would
what
you
was
drill
said
for
about
the
50% expansion being
with
required?
That is what I've seen as well,
Well,
on
I'm
every
sorry, what was
plan. The 50% expansion, you always see the expansion pools, yes.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, and then the 5 pool system is the one that I'm thinking of, this the shallow pool system that you're referring to
Yep.
is in areas of high groundwater. So, and even for that, you had to go to border review. So, Suffolk County Border Review for that.
Yep.
So you wouldn't need that for this site, but they are going to have very strict review of these IA systems because they are looking at them very carefully.
Yeah. And is it safe to say the likelihood of a 10-bedroom home on one of those lots is kind of slim because of the requirements of?
I wouldn't want to comment. I don't know.
No.
The market probably drives that as well. You know. People don't, I mean, this is just anecdotal, but less and less you have people coming in and say, give me the biggest house you can get. You know, that's,
Really?
yes,
That's
absolutely.
good to hear. That's
I mean, the code actually identifies the maximum gross floor area that they
Yes.
can
Right.
have. So,
Understood. So we're covered
yes.
on those issues more than one way. Okay.
It's up to the county.
All right, Lisa, do you have anything?
No.
And, and Willa, are you, any more questions? Are you satisfied?
Yeah, I'm satisfied if, as long as we can agree further to update the language on the covenant.
Yep.
And also,
Absolutely.
but John didn't really address why the property's marketed as to the 4 properties you can exit, either to the beach
It's-
or Hill Street. Is that not? no
That's not
longer-
helping the process.
I have no idea. This comes up every once in a while.
I know.
I just ask people to ignore broker puff and blow. I have no idea. I mean, it's sort of been the bane of my existence. I was in Sagaponack one time, and I'm there asking for a variance to build a house that needed quite a few variances, and the broker puts it on the market as if the variances had been granted. I wanted to strangle them. I just ask people to ignore that.
Well,
It is
this
what it
property's
is.
on the market as
I
if
know, but it is what it is.
it's been approved.
Yeah,
I
it
hear
is
you.
what it is. I don't have any control over that.
But you know, we're members of the community, and we
Yep.
see the paper, and we're just like,
What was it marketed as? I ignore them. I
Well,
don't look at them.
it's-
I'm not trying to be coy.
I mean, they've got dotted lines all over the place. The road, the existing road is still there with a dotted line, so one might think that
if
there's gonna be a road down the middle of
somebody
the
wants
property.
to send me the circular or whatever it is, I'll call the broker and
Well,
Get them
John,
into line.
there's,
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it. I don't pay attention to this.
So it just says you can exit, if you buy these properties, you can exit to the beach through Captain's Neck, or you can exit to Hill Street.
Well,
And
the
so
map
you
itself
have
shows that you can't do
option out.
that.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
John, I'm reminded that we've ignored it, but section 116-38 sub 9 says, no regrading, clearing, tree removal, or work in preparation for future use of a site may take place until site plan approval or written permission has been received from the planning board. We even had objections come from neighbors about the clearing of the, major clearing of that property in the middle of this process over the last 12 years, just anecdotally.
Okay.
It took place and we ignored it.
Okay.
And it's a lot of work's been done. And some of the neighbors are people that I know too well for lots of other reasons, and they've been screaming about, it's just been totally cleared from what it was when it started, and so we ignored it.
Well,
And
I don't
you
know anything
persuade-
about
you
that.
persuade-
other
You
than
went to the ARB
Yeah.
and persuaded them about the other property.
I
This
don't know,
history.
Alan, I don't know anything about that,
History,
other
I
than
know.
to say there are no clearing
Long
restrictions
before
in the
you were,
area.
long before you were involved.
Alan,
That
if
took
that
place.
was, there were no clearing restrictions in the village of Southampton. The
And
only
I'm just
place
talking about what's in the
place restricted from clearing is if
code.
you're in wetlands areas.
This is a wetlands, this is what it says here.
That's a term of art, wetlands.
I understand.
So, does the board feel comfortable moving towards scheduling a public hearing on this application? Is everybody satisfied? Because we're at that point.
You're at that point.
I have to interject.
Excuse
We've
me, this is
never
not
heard-
a public
we've
hearing,
never heard
please.
From the neighbors.
Please.
You'll-
That's
that's
what
why
the
we're
public
scheduling the
hearing is
public hearing.
for.
Please don't.
Well, your counsel.
Please, you know, he's just gonna keep talking, that's what he does.
Stop.
That's what he
Mr.
does.
Bennett,
Please
please.
tell him to be quiet.
Mr. Bennett, please. Sir,
I'd
sir,
like to-
please,
I'd
have
like
He's
to
gonna
a
ask
keep
a
talking.
legal
counsel,
question
just
of
have a
counsel.
seat
No,
for a minute.
no.
Just if you could have a seat.
This is what he does. He ignores everybody and keeps
Mr.
talking.
Bennett, both counsel, if you could please.
But I have a valid point.
Sir, Mr. Bennett, I'm asking for a moment so I can speak to the board.
Do you want to take a recess? Like,
If we could,
Yep.
if I could ask you to session for a moment to speak.
so we're gonna take 5 or 10 minutes?
If you're gonna go into executive session, if
There's
you could just
speaking
let me
with
know
counsel.
why, that's all.
If there's a resolution that's made that needs to be made public, we certainly will.
Okay,
I need
thank
to
you.
advise my
Thank you
counsel.
very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We'll advise everybody.
so I can.
Hey, is there a motion then to go into executive session to speak with counsel, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. If I could be heard briefly, Chairman, counsel, I don't recall your name. Could you just give your name, please?
Jeff Bradman.
Thank you, Mr. Red. So the board's procedures have been, and I believe they're going to be consistent with those procedures tonight. This is a work session. At work sessions, the applicant and applicant's representatives are normally heard. Public session, public meeting, public hearing, which I believe the board is considering scheduling, any and all will be available to be heard. I would propose that consistent with the board's procedures, if there's a motion to proceed in that fashion tonight, is there such a
Yeah,
motion?
I'd like to move that we proceed in the manner that we have documented in the past.
And is there a second?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
Having said that,
Well,
Mr.
as
Bradley,
well,
I just
Yes,
wanna-
aye.
Aye, okay,
And
four
I
ayes.
just want to mention, and I have no objection, counsel, you mentioned there's a legal issue. As I have mentioned to Mr. Bennett before, anybody can reach out to me with legal issues, but in terms of the board procedures, this is the way they'll be proceeding tonight. But I have absolutely no objection, counsel, to your following up with me at some other time. I'll give you my number. You'll call me and we'll do that, as Mr. Bennett has in the past. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
No.
Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank
So
you. So did you make the motion, or you want me to make the motion?
I want to make sure everybody has asked all the questions that they want to ask. Willa,
For now.
you good?
Oh, yeah, I just want to make sure, so we can continue to discuss the legal documents that would be the underpinnings of
Yes.
anything we vote on, even though we're going to a public hearing, just
Absolutely.
confirming, okay, great.
I just want to explain to John also that
Sorry,
we
Charlie?
have some scheduling conflict for our next meeting for the public hearing because Jeff can't be here.
Right.
So if it's okay with you, can we do the first meeting in February?
You will be here for the other one, so it is what it is.
Right,
That's fine.
I appreciate that. I unfortunately have a hearing in Queens, and I just
No,
would
no,
not
no,
be
no,
here
of
in
course,
person.
that's
So if
fine.
we could
That's
go to the
okay.
first meeting in February.
That'd be great.
Which I have
Fine
is
with
February
me.
6th.
Yes, February
Fine with me.
6th.
So, and also, you're gonna refer them out, I don't know that you need a motion for that, Kathy, do you?
So
Well,
just
I'm
to
gonna-
be, right,
I'm-
just to be clear, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can
No.
I just- My understanding from Ms. Eisman's suggestions were that the matter could be scheduled for public hearing with all appropriate referrals to be made that are normally made in the interim. Is there such a motion?
Yes.
Second?
Second.
Aye.
And-
I think we have to do a
Aye.
formal roll call for this.
So,
And Antoinette, are you with us? No, Antoinette's.
I'm sorry. I'm substituting for her tonight. I'm Emma.
Okay. We need a formal call on this vote?
Motion to schedule the meeting on the 6th of February.
Okay.
Right, Kathy, 6? 6 February is the next,
Yes.
is the first one?
Yes.
so
Okay, I'm gonna
So
do it
I
by
don't
we
know-
can do a roll call. Chairman, I don't have the names in front of me. Mr. McFarland?
Aye.
I'm sorry, Kathy, I don't have all the names. Would you mind telling me?
Ms. Cowell? Aye. Chair Piazza?
Aye.
Understandable.
Ms. Bernstein?
Aye.
My apologies for not having the
No,
name
no,
right in front of
sorry.
me. I was looking at signs and getting confused.
Not a problem. Okay. So, John, we'll see you on the 6th.
Thank you
And
very much.
Thank you
We
so
have
much.
time in between that if we need any.
Merry Christmas.
Same to you.
And you know what to do as far as notices and so forth.
Yeah, we'll get the notices out. Thank goodness we have some time to do it.
My apologies, I got confused with things.
No, it's okay.
And, Mr. Chairman, with that, if I may be excused, I
Yes.
believe I'm not. And I just want to make sure Ms. Cooley was going to be,
Alice is waiting in the wings.
okay, perfect.
She has to join us by Zoom tonight.
Alice
I
Cooley is
don't
in the
think
wings?
my number.
Yes.
We hope.
Yes, as a panelist,
And can we also
please.
let Jane Claire in, please?
Is James there?
This is my
been
cell
there
number.
and
I'll be
wasn't
in
let
the
in.
afternoon. Okay.
I don't know if she's here in
I
the
wish
village.
everybody a great holiday season.
Same to you, thank you.
Is she in Florida with her mother, or is she in the village?
She's here.
Hi, I've been here watching, and I wasn't let in until just now.
Why not?
And this might be a good time to discuss that Jane will be leaving us on January 1st, going to the ARB. And we have a new board member that'll be starting. So we look forward to that after the holidays, and we're going to miss you, Jane.
Yeah, we'll miss you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, Jane, we'll miss you and hopefully see you around.
Yes, you'll see me around.
Great.
Okay, let's keep moving on to the next subdivision review, which is Hetty Creek LLC lot line modification.
Good evening, Linda Riley,
Hi, Linda.
235 Hampton Road for the applicant, or at least one of the applicants. Just to be clear again, I represent one of these property owners. It would have been a conflict for me to represent both. There are two property owners involved here, so I represent one, and they've agreed that I'll be the presenter to avoid having two lawyers saying the same
The
thing.
northern one or the southern one?
I represent the one who's selling, the transferor.
The southern one.
The
The
southern.
southern one.
Okay.
Formerly, it was the McGowan
Oops,
property.
Hold on a second.
It was formerly McGowan property.
Well,
yes.
hold on, wait. Alice is not in. Can we
Oh.
let?
Sorry.
Thank you. I just have to,
I'm here now.
Okay, thank you.
there's Alice.
I'm sorry,
Thanks.
Linda.
So I have submitted covenants and restrictions and easements at the board's request. And I know that a memo was distributed to all of you this afternoon. The village was kind enough to provide me with a copy of the memo that Kathy Eisenman, or no, actually Chick Voorhees did this memo.
Yep.
And I want to say, first of all, that this memo sort of illustrates the reason we're here in the first place. My client bought his property in 2005, and you can see from this memo that that area that is mowed right down to the wetlands was already like that in 2005. In 2004, you can see from that memo that there's this swath that's mowed down to Hetty Creek. When my client bought his property, he didn't realize that that was even part of his lot, really, over there. And in fact, it was being mowed by the neighbor because the neighbor wanted a better view of the creek. This has been going on with various attempts to resolve it. Eventually, the property owner who was mowing that sold it. There's a new owner there. He only bought it about 2 years ago. And when he bought it, my client and he started talking about how to resolve this issue because it was clearly an issue for my client.
What was the issue?
The issue is
That they were mismanaging the land?
well, I'm not saying that it was a mismanagement,
Okay.
but his property was being manipulated without his permission.
Okay.
It's his land, he's paying taxes on it, and he's liable for it. And I'm not saying that it was misused as much as there had to be, it needed to be cleaned up. It cleaned up in terms of who's doing what, where, when, who's responsible for what, etc. So they agreed, the new neighbor and my client, to apply for this lot line modification that you can see from the maps that we've submitted, the transfer maps, that the triangle to be transferred follows exactly where it had been mowed. It was my client's, it had been mowed, it was not mowed by him. But I'm not making anybody a bad guy. It
Understood.
doesn't. So what we're trying to do here is get the right people addressing the right thing. My client is selling him this portion,
The triangle.
right. And we understand that it's a process, but we thought it was the best way to address head-on and go through the whole process from beginning to end, because it is beautiful property, it's important property, it has significant value, and it needed to be addressed. So no one's trying to pretend that there was anything except, mowing down there, and it's shown on our map, and that's how we chose the line. We also understand that this is only the beginning of the review. We certainly have no proposals to do anything at the moment in terms of building any more structures. The fellow who bought next door, I'm told, has what he wants on the property. My client has no desire to enlarge that very small house that he has. So it seems to me to be clear that this particular action that you're taking here, which would simply be, if approved, and that's a ways down the line because we have to get a ZBA agreement first, but if it is approved, it won't have any impact on the environment as it's been. Clearly, since before 2005,
Yep.
this is mowed. And I will tell you, this is a large subdivision. It was a major subdivision. In 1966, before it was subdivided, you can see on the Google Earth maps and on the GIS, it was all farmland. And it was farmed right down to Hetty Creek. That's what that whole area, that whole subdivision was. And it's not that way now. And we understand buffers, and we need to get the right people doing the right things.
The third lot is under construction.
The third lot?
There's 3 lots. Was it Grimm owned one, and then McGowan, and then there's a third lot down by the water.
No, the McGowan owned 2.
2 lots?
McGowan owned 2, including the one that's in
Because down
front.
by the water, there's
There's-
major construction, and
No, that's
but
done.
it doesn't go down to the water.
It-
There's a duck blind and everything else along the edge.
That's finished construction. There's no construction going on there now.
Well,
On
okay.
you mean the lot to the south?
Yeah, down to the south, to
Yeah.
the southwest. Well, maybe there's no construction, but there's a construction gate and a lot of driveway work. It looks like there's a lot going on in there.
You sure you're not looking at the old Curry property?
That's across the street.
No, it's right next door.
Curry property is on the same north side of Ox
Yes.
Pasture?
Yes.
Well, then there's construction going on there.
Yeah, the Curry property.
McGowan's had two houses, one for the kids and one for the adults.
Exactly. And the one we're talking about is the kid's house. quote
Got it.
unquote.
That was the big one.
No. Anyway, we digress. But what I'm looking for is at this point is I hope a resolution on SECRA, because we submitted that quite some time ago. I know Kathy has submitted something on that, and I would like to get the board to adopt a negative declaration at some point.
You're gonna have to do some explaining.
Good. What's the question?
I just don't see how a negative declaration could be, because this action will have a negative effect on the environment.
How so?
Because there's no buffer planting.
There's no buffer requirement. Nobody ever required one there. There is no violation on this premises because nobody ever required a buffer area. This was developed so long ago, these houses, that literally the board didn't do that then, the kinds of things they do now, which is require buffer areas. There's no buffer area requirement.
DEC grandfathered.
Well,
So what would trigger the requirement for a buffer? The potential requirement for a buffer, possible requirement for a buffer. I'm speaking to an attorney, I have to be careful.
If they went in for a building permit that was in an adjacent area that affected the wetlands, then they would have to.
So
So
they
a
would have
lot
to
line
stop.
modification doesn't trigger
Wetland
it?
setback.
Yeah.
It would be
Yeah.
wetland setback before it would trigger, and then
But-
the DEC gets involved, and then it gets. then
But
you
why
have to
wouldn't
go.
a lot line
Because
modification?
I guess because it's not modifying the, the development that's on the site. I mean, ideally, this is a way to, just to recognize that they should be establishing some kind of buffers, but I don't know that it's possible. And Alice, I would look to you from a legal perspective, but I mean, I would love to see it happen here.
I will tell you right now that I'm talking to my client and the neighbor next door that I don't represent about the possibility of establishing some sort of buffer. And, we can talk about that. Typically, this was not a covenant, it's not a restriction, it's not on the subdivision map, it's nowhere. It's not, there's no violation that's been issued, and there's nothing that anyone has called out. I mean,
Right.
we had this, we had the wetlands flagged by Chick Voorhees, and it was what it was, when it was, and has been for some time, mowed
Yeah.
down there.
Yeah, I get all that, but the action of modifying the lot,
It'll be exactly the same as it is now on the ground.
No phragmites.
but we're acknowledging, okay,
So
we would be
I-
acknowledging,
I'm not getting to the point yet where I'm asking you, you're acknowledging that it's mowed, a portion of it is mowed right down to the edge.
yeah,
That is what it is. I mean, I'm not, nobody's trying
Right.
to say it's anything else. What I'm trying to say is just proceeding with this process, which, by the way, I can't go to the health department without a neg deck. I can't go to, all of this requires a negative declaration for a secret determination. And the part 3 that you, not the part 3, the part 2 that you will be analyzing here asks specifically whether the proposed action, and the proposed action is a line on a map, that's all it is, whether the proposed action will have any impact on water quality. Proposed action, I think, clearly will not, if you're talking about drawing a line on a map, have any impact. There may be things that could be better managed in the future, perhaps. But the question is, will there be any change and deleterious condition? Okay,
Right.
and I'm happy to answer any more questions you have.
oh, that explains it.
Yep.
And, being that the northerly lot will be larger now, they might be able to put a larger structure on that lot. And then that would require a different septic system and maybe
I have,
environmental,
right.
I'm just kind of,
Yes, of course. I mean,
Stream
who knows
country.
what's going to happen? Property owners can do all kinds of things to their property in the future. And I can only say that I have asked for floor plans of this person who is not my client, so that, which he says he's providing to me, that will show exactly what the gross floor area is now. It's a large house. It's a big house. It's a big 2-story house. And I just looking at it as a land use attorney, I can't see what he could do very much with, because he's got to stay, 175 feet or 200 feet away from the wetlands for septic, I think, 150 for any structures. He's already got a tennis court, a pool,
It's a real place.
he's got no place to really build much of anything.
okay.
And there are no
But-
phragmites in
but-
this area.
Yeah, now,
Because, if you went in for the if the phragmites, which make, Hetty Creek is generally unobservable,
Right,
almost entirely.
because it's grown in,
Oh, you can't see it with a
Okay.
phragmite, but along this little stretch here,
because they've mowed it to the,
which
To
they
the
never,
edge.
they
You
never do.
know,
There are no
nobody's trying to
phragmites
pull the wool, nobody's
until you
trying,
get down to the duck blind on the Curry property, right by the end of the road.
I just look at this as a potential opportunity, and I want to make sure I'm doing
I
my,
think you're viewing it the right way.
okay,
Tony?
yes.
sorry.
I would suggest that you ask Kathy's office to take a look at the potential build out on the property that is increasing in size in order to make a more complete analysis.
Well, I've agreed to submit the floor plans as soon as I get them and put the GFA, give you all the
For
calculations.
your client.
What?
This is for your client or next
No,
door?
I'm doing it.
The neighbor.
The neighbor,
For
the
neighbor.
neighbor has already agreed to
Yep.
give me that information.
Okay.
But I think that makes sense.
Okay.
Like, that makes sense too, is to know, like, what is the greatest potential there, right? Is that what you're saying? Like, what could possibly happen with this new lot?
What is
Right.
enabled?
I don't think
Yes.
So I'm not asking you for a determination tonight.
I know.
Yeah, okay. And there has to go through a public hearing, and, I just, I don't see but I don't see the opportunity for much, but given where the house is located and the pool and the tennis court and everything else, but I have no problem. And as I said, the neighbor has agreed to submit that to me. It's taking him a while to do that, partially because he didn't have floor plans when he bought it. So, he didn't
But that
build it.
expansion, Linda, that expansion is what would trigger the potential need for, establishing the buffer and getting the DEC involved and all of that. That expansion of the property, especially more bathrooms, would involve the health department and the DEC. So it would likely improve the situation of the environment.
Well, Willa, just let me say this. The lot line modification requires the DEC approval and also the Suffolk County Department of Health's
Oh, it
approval.
does?
Both.
So that would be triggered and
Both.
would likely.
All those applications are in. The application to the DEC, the application to, and it is DEC regulated, the application to the Suffolk County Department of Health Services. I have a letter of incomplete application back. They sent me a notice of incomplete application. They're asking me for more information all over the place, including stuff I think has nothing to do with them at all, but it doesn't matter. We are before all those boards. And I will have to also apply to the zoning board, which is just waiting for those floor plans. So, I think that's all I wanted to sort of clarify today. Or unless you have any other questions.
I don't have any other questions.
I have none.
None.
Okay.
I just want to agree with Tony that if we have the opportunity to put in some buffer, it's the right thing to do.
I'll be talking to my client and the neighbor about that.
Yeah, it may not be in violation now,
DC may say
but
something.
it's the right thing to do.
I'll be talking to them about it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just have a hard time signing a secret document that says that there's no negative, because to me, allowing this to happen is a negative effect. It's
You haven't allowed it to happen
justifying.
yet. You haven't allowed it to happen yet. You're not, yeah.
It's justifying a pre-existing negative effect on the environment, and
You see it as an opportunity, though, right?
Yeah.
well, I just, the action of modifying this lot line is justifying a negative effect on the environment, in my opinion. And though I'm taking those words off of the secret,
Sustaining it.
sustaining it, and
You're basically condoning the past actions. And we all
Yeah,
know
so-
that that's not what's supposed to be happening.
I'm sorry, but respectfully, I disagree. I'm fishing around for the part two now. Can you, which I have here somewhere, but I have too much here.
It's
Part
number
two's
9,
close.
right? Will the proposed action result in adverse change to natural resources?
Yeah, well, it won't result in any change.
No.
The one I'm thinking of is 13B. right? Would the proposed action physically?
It's not in here.
Oh, no, that's, okay, yeah, 13B, would the proposed action physically alter or encroach into any existing wetland or water body? Well, the wetlands,
No,
the
doesn't alter
wetland
approach.
has been mowed. It has been mowed. We're not, but we're not asking you at this point in time to allow it. We're asking you at this point in time to grant us the ability to move forward. We're not going to change anything without approvals.
Alice, am I? Help. I don't know if she can. Alice, can you hear me?
Yes.
Alice, do you have a problem with proceeding with a secret determination?
Do I? No, I do not.
Pardon me?
No, I do not.
Okay.
We understand it has to go to a public hearing, and there's an opportunity for you to, make a determination.
Okay, so,
Yeah, I'd do a public hearing.
then why don't we?
I'll move we schedule a public hearing.
No, we're
No,
just
we're-
approving a neg deck tonight.
Oh.
Negative declaration.
No, I think we need some more information prior to scheduling a public hearing,
Yeah. of course.
particularly on the potential size of development, and then we can consider any conditions.
Development.
Right, but Linda's just asking us to
Yeah.
approve the negative
deck.
neg
Yeah.
deck.
Yes, I know. Yes, I know.
Okay,
Okay.
And I think it's appropriate to proceed.
I mean, the real potential for future development, you can just, by eyeballing it, is on my client's property.
Yep,
He has no intention of doing that, but that's where the opportunity is.
yep, that's the big one.
But,
so I'd like to move that we proceed with a declaration of negative impact.
You'd like a vote
Yeah.
on declaring a neg deck?
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
I'm opposed to the concept.
The what?
concept?
I'm opposed to the concept, that's all.
Okay.
But we know you need to move forward.
yeah,
and-
But
I-
we
Yes, I know we need to move forward.
we need your vote, Jane. Are you an aye or a nay?
I'll say move forward with hopefully buffer conditions coming.
Well, the
No.
board is adopting a negative declaration pursuant to secra. Are you an aye or a nay on that vote?
I'm an aye.
Okay, the ayes have
Thanks,
it.
Jane.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Let's see.
I'll see if we can pull it from the folder. I don't have a clean copy for you to sign,
I think it's
but
still
we'll
in
make a
there.
copy and get it.
I didn't see it.
Yeah,
It's not still in there?
Let me try this folder. It's this folder.
it should be in here.
It's standing up there. It was in the front.
It was in the folder from the last meeting.
Yeah, I think it's still.
We're
in
looking for it.
I can see that.
And if there's two, then we can, okay. Here's one. No, that's the part one.
Should be usually standing up. That first one?
This is the stuff that was provided by Chick.
Oh, that's his stuff, okay.
Yeah. I kind of remember we didn't have them printed, right, Alice? Remember there was something?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they were printed. I think they were emailed and never printed.
I can come in
so-
and sign it this week.
Okay.
Perhaps you'll just get it to me one way or, and I'll, because I do have, it's part of my notice of incomplete application to Health Department.
Yep.
Right, okay.
Okay. Thank you, Linda.
Tajay or I will send that to you, Linda.
Thank you.
And you think you can even do a
Yeah, we
digital
have,
signature, Tony?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
A review to February 6th.
It was, the resolution is the.
Pond Lane goes to February 6th.
Okay. So, moving along, site plan review, Town of Southampton, 51 Pond Lane, is adjourned to February 6th. Do we need to vote on that, or did we do it already? I think we did.
We
You
did.
vote,
Okay.
yeah.
And then we have the December 5th meetings for approval.
So moved. The minutes?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. That's it. Our next meeting is January 17th, just as a reminder to everyone. I'm gonna have to zoom in for that.
Yeah, you're away.
Me too.
Okay, I'd like to propose that we close this meeting. I mean, move that we close the meeting.
Seconded?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.